listening to the Soul Signals podcast, and I'm your host, Lynnessa. Join us to hear insights and unique experiences as I navigate my twin flame journey and spirituality. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. So I thought a good topic for today's episode because I get, questions about signs you can tell you have a twin flame or soulmate, or signs you can tell someone is your twin flame or you have a soul connection to them. And that I'm going to be answering on next week's episode as one of the questions, because we have something really exciting planned. It's going to be fun and more interactive where we answer your questions, and I'm going to have a special guest on. So in that episode, I'll give more details about that. But in today's episode, I wanted to dedicate it to signs and synchronicities, because this is something that is a major component of spirituality. You can't avoid it. And being sensitive to or being able to recognize the signs really help when it comes to meeting and discerning new people who come into your life, whether those are platonic relationships or members of your soul tribe or soulmates or twin flames. Knowing how to recognize the signs and synchronicities that the universe is constantly sending you really help you stay in alignment and really help you to receive direct guidance from God or your spiritual team. So I kind of did an outline of all of the ones that I can think of that I resonate with or have experienced. So we'll just talk about those, and I encourage you to follow along and see which ones you resonate with, or maybe ones you didn't realize before were signs, so that you can start paying attention to these or being more sensitive to them. So in the last episode, I kind of talked about what you would experience when you have a spiritual awakening, and that is really when you start to notice the signs. One thing I noticed in retrospect is that the signs have been occurring my whole life, but I didn't notice them because I wasn't open to noticing them. So right after or right before I had my spiritual awakening is when I started to notice the signs, and when I became more sensitive to the signs. So there are so many different signs and so many different ways of the divine getting your attention or reaching out to you, but I'm just going to mention the ones that I experience frequently, or the ones that are very loud because some are more subtle than others, honestly. So the best way I thought that I could organize my thoughts around this, because I have so many, is to break it down into 3 parts. So the first part we'll talk about is the types of signs. And again, these are just the ones that I recognize the most frequently. The second will be the medium used or how the sign is delivered. And lastly, the third will be who is sending the signs. And of course, I'll do my best to give you real life relatable examples of this so that hopefully you can pick up on where you might have missed a sign. When I think about types of signs, major ones that stick out to me the most, that I feel like I see the most, would be synchronicities, confirmations, and synchronicities could also be fateful events and omens. So I'm going to break this down, but let me just preface it by saying, once you have a relationship with your spiritual team, or you have certain things that are recognizable that your psyche picks up on or your subconscious becomes aware of, your spiritual team will communicate with you in a way that is relatable and specific to you. So of course there's going to be other types that I may not even mention here, but just be open and aware to the various different ways that they can potentially communicate with you. So Synchronicity is defined as the simultaneous occurrence of events which appear significantly related to but have no discernible causal connection. So, what does all of that mean? Well, basically, it's multiple things that are happening at the same time that appear to relate to each other, but you can't explain how they are connected. An inexplicable coincidence of events unfolding. Like, say, your car battery dies when you are leaving a store parking lot, and right at that very moment, the person who you park next to just so happens to come out with jumper cables that they just purchased at the store. And I'll give an even better example of this one, a really good one that happened to me. And this one is an example of synchronicity as well as a fateful event. So, just to recap, synchronicity is events happening at the same time that relate to each other, but there's seemingly no connection. Whereas a fateful event is events happening like a chain of events, one after the other. So I have examples of both. In this experience, while I was going through my healing, as I started my spiritual journey, I was like unpacking my emotions one step at a time because it was a lot to deal with. And at this time, I was someone who definitely compartmentalized my pain. And one of the places that this showed up, especially after going through postpartum depression, was in the trunk of my car, meaning I would literally hoard in the trunk of my car. And if you're interested, I have a blog up over on the Soul Signals podcast blog where I talk about my past and I share an essay about, all of the things that I've been through. Just in case you're interested, you can check that out after listening. So, inside my trunk, many things in there from my past that I didn't want to address or heal from, I had locked away for years. And I had totally forgot that these things were in there because it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? So I'm driving my car one day to my sister's house and my tire goes flat. I can literally hear it pop. So as I'm rolling down the road, and it's in a rural country area, there's literally just a few houses and wilderness. And in some of these places where I live in Georgia, you don't just want to pull over and stop at just anyone's house or the side of anyone's property because it can be dangerous. So I'm rolling along, and instead of stopping at the first one or two or three homes that I see, I hear a voice telling me to keep going. So I keep rolling, and then I hear loud and clear, there, pull over there. So the sweetest older gentleman and his adult son come out and tell me to pull my car or reposition it directly in their driveway. And of course, I was a ball of nerves. I had my son with me and my nieces, so I was visibly frustrated. But this man was like an angel. He was so kind and he calmed me down. And it turns out that this man literally had a whole car workshop in his garage. So because he needed my spare tire, I ended up having to open my trunk and begin to address the pain that I had locked away in there. And of course, I totally forgot I had all that stuff in my trunk. So when he opened it, there was all of my art, school projects, works, and everything that I had worked on before I had my son. Mind you, it had been years since I saw these things. So I was reminded of what I was capable of and how much passion I had for being a creative. And so I was overcome with emotions, and I had to heal and release those issues because, so that part of myself could return. And when I left this gentleman's home, and he was definitely a healer or an earth angel, I'm convinced, I felt the overwhelming need to bless him in some way or give back. And just as that thought crossed my mind while driving to the end of his street, I turned to the left and see a yard sign that says Give Back Real Estate Company. So it was like this series of seemingly unrelated events unfolding one after the other so I could heal these issues from my past because they were important for my spiritual growth and I had been avoiding it. Now, the next one, and I'm sure you all can relate to this one, is confirmations. And this is something that I do a lot for people because I give tarot and oracle readings. And so my clients get a lot of confirmations through these types of readings. So, confirmation is just when your intuition, God, or your spirit team, whatever you want to call it, has been giving you an impression or something leading you to knowing or doing something, and then a source that is outside yourself confirms that inner dialogue that you were having that no one else could know about. Because a lot of times when we hear from spirit, we hear it and we hear it inside our mind. So then the confirmation comes when we hear or see the reaffirming of that inner dialogue. So, a quick example I have, I had been feeling for a while like, or being led to, um, like I needed or could do or wanted to do a podcast because I feel like I have a lot to offer people who are going through a spiritual journey because I've been through a lot. So, the student usually becomes the teacher. Well, anyway, one of the members of my soul tribe ended up just coming to me and saying he wanted to look at my chart to help me, figure out what my purpose was and what would be a good fit for me. And he literally came back and said, "You should do a podcast. It's in your chart." And that was like a huge confirmation, which is what led me here. And the last type, which I feel like these are my favorite because they are so mysterious and magical, I don't know, are omens. And omens are literally just signs or things that you think are significant. Like for me, I have a special relationship with birds and butterflies and other animals, as I'm sure many of you can relate to that. They mean certain things to me. And so at some very important times in my life, I've seen these messengers just appear in front of me in miraculous ways, like landing on me or coming up to my window and just staring at me flying. And then, like, until I acknowledge, like, okay, I see you, I get the message, then they fly away, so stuff like that. Or if I was hearing something at that moment, then I'll see one fly by. Or literally, I've been in the middle of the ocean or in the middle of what we would call the projects in Miami, Florida, where you don't see butterflies. And I was like, I pulled up somewhere because I was lost and I felt like I was close to the place, but I was lost. So something said pull over. So I'm in the middle of what we would call concrete jungle, USA, in Miami, Florida, where I'm originally from. And I see this swarm of butterflies, like there's flying around in like a cyclone, like right in front of me. And there was absolutely no reason, no apparent reason that these butterflies should have been here. I didn't see any flowers. I saw trees, but it was like one tree that they were close to and a garbage can. And I'm like, what in the world? It was just so out of place. So it was so magical to me because it was like, okay, yes, you're in the right place. And it turns out I was like just up the street from wherever I needed to be. So, things like that, just, to help reaffirm that I'm on the right path or what I'm hearing is true. So again, that could be like animals, feathers, anything, songs, a weird, or finding money on your path. While you're heading in a certain direction, like let's say you're thinking about taking a trip somewhere and then all of a sudden a song comes on and it's addressing your thought at the moment, so those omens that, or songs, that brings me to the next part, which is mediums, or ways that spirit uses to, or what they use to deliver these messages. So one of the major ways I receive signs as well is through music or songs. Sometimes they'll just pop into my head, or they will be playing and they address whatever my concern was at the moment. Or it could be animals, it could be people. Like, spirit will use random strangers, your kids, loved ones, friends, to channel and give messages to you that coincide with whatever you're dealing with at the moment. It could be images, and I have so many funny stories about images because I have like this Google screensaver on my TV, and so many of the images that pop up would address my thoughts or give me hints to what was coming up, next, like in my day, kind of like how tarot cards do. There's this one picture of a skyscraper with a lightning bolt striking it, and it almost hints to me, like almost that there's sort of like a tower moment coming up, and that I should be prepared. And then, sure enough, that day or the next day, something will happen that sort of, throws me off, or, and it was like a warning, for me to be ready. Or there's times like when I'm talking to my boyfriend, all of a sudden there will be pictures of hearts and lovebirds or twin animals, and just little things like that. And then the next major way signs come is through dreams or visions. And I noticed that with dreams and visions, there is so much symbolism. And spirit loves to use this form of communication because we're resting or sleeping. So we're more open to hearing and receiving messages. We're less distracted. And so if you're someone that has a lot of dreams, I would definitely recommend getting a dream journal so that you can write down what the dream was about immediately when you wake up, so that you don't forget any details, because so much guidance and clarity come from dreams, especially in regards to what you need to heal. My dreams have been the main way that I get through my shadow work, because oftentimes things will be brought up that are buried deep within our subconscious that we're not aware of, so that we can deal with them. And then the last sign that we'll talk about today, and I feel like these are so prevalent, especially now, and I often refer to them as text messages from the universe, are numbers, because letters and numbers have their own vibrations and messages that they carry. You'll start to see certain times and sequences or random numbers in different places. Like, say you're driving a car and then you look down and the odometer says 1111, or you're at the drive-through and they hand you your change and the receipt says 747. And if you're interested, I'm going to post a link to a remarkable resource for different meanings for like so many numbers. Like, she has basically all of the combinations in this week's blog post. It's called Sacred Scribes, and it's super detailed. And that's why I say I feel like I'm getting a text message from the universe, because I'll be thinking something and then the next thing I know, I'll get like an email notification or a text message, and then I look at the time on my phone and I'll feel a little tingle from my third eye, and I say, let me look that number up. And when I look it up and read, it addresses whatever I'm thinking about at that moment. So the last thing I wanted to talk about before we go today is who is giving these signs or messages. Now, if you're someone like me who believes in the oneness of the universe, then we can cut to the chase and just say everything is connected. So ultimately, God or source or the great all there is, the great I am, whatever you prefer to call it, is sending the messages. But to take it a step further, I'll just say it's been my experience, using my intuition and when my guides communicate with me directly, that on the other end of these messages or signs is my spirit team, which includes my higher self, my twin flame, my guides, my angels, my ancestors, all of them. So I hope today that sharing my experiences help, because these probably barely scratch the surface, if I'm going to be honest. But I just wanted you to be conscious of and aware that, they will communicate with you in so many different ways. You'd be surprised. Just remember that the universe is vast, it's abundant, and very creative. So keep your eyes and ears opened. And as always, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in more, you can check out our blog at soulsignalspodcast.com. Goes a little deeper into my experiences. You can also follow us over on IG, Facebook, or TikTok at Soul Signals Podcast for more content or to continue on the conversation. Have a comment or a question you need help with? Well, you can send us a recording or message to info@soulsignalspodcast.com that we may even end up featuring on the show. Till next time, take care.